Are we ready to start? Not yet. Yes, please, let's start. I wanted to welcome everyone to the Wednesday, June 7th, 2023 5:30 study session of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair Wormiak,
Present.
Vice Chair Roberts,
Present.
Commissioner Alayan,
Present.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
and Commissioner Maruzzi is excused tonight. We have 5 members present.
Can I have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, Madam Chair, the agenda was posted and available at City Hall by 9 p.m. on Thursday, June 1st, and posted on the city's website in accordance with the city's policies and procedures.
The next item is public comments. It will not be public comments on this agenda item. It's on items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. And if anyone has a comment, you have 3 minutes. Please come forward.
Good evening, Madam Chair and the commissioners. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Aftab Dada. This evening, I'm addressing you all as president of the Palm Springs Hospitality Association.
Mr. Jada, one second, please. Mr. Jada is only available until 6 o'clock, so I made an exception for him to give testimony on this item before the presentation. You can continue.
Turn up the volume a little bit?
And can you turn up the volume, Chris?
We'll have Todd do that in the TV room. Thank you.
Mr. Dada, go ahead.
Thank you again for allowing me to speak because I have another appointment. My name is Aftab Dada. This evening, I'm addressing as president of the Palm Springs Hospitality and Restaurant Association and chairman of PS Resorts, 2 organizations that represent tourism, the largest contributors to the Palm Springs economy. We are pleased to see that progress is being made on the stalled Palm Springs West Valley campus for College of the Desert. For the past 2 decades, our businesses have contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars for the bonds. The Palm Springs campus is a perfect location to provide opportunities for our Coachella Valley students. The campus is across the street from Palm Springs High School, walking distance to the police station for students interested in public safety training, walking distance to the sports stadium, walking distance to the Coachella Valley Economic Partnership Innovation Hub. As for the students seeking management careers in the tourism and hospitality industry, the site is a short shuttle ride or walking distance to the Palm Springs International Airport and also to our downtown village, which has the greatest concentration of hotels and restaurants in the Coachella Valley. I'm not here to cast blame for the delays in building the campus, nor I'm here to urge the Planning Commission to take any advocacy actions that are outside of the Commission's purview. I'm here to express gratitude that the Palm Springs COD campus is finally taking real steps towards completion. I'm here to encourage the Planning Commission to facilitate this California state project in all ways possible. And I'm here to say that PS Resort and PSHA are committed to making this Palm Springs campus a reality for the future of Coachella Valley students and the local economy. Thank you so much, madam. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Dada. With that, we are closing the public comment section. We are now in a discussion and an update on preliminary plans for the College of the Desert West Valley Palm Springs campus, a proposed 176,000 square foot facility located on a 27-acre site at 2363 East Tockwitz Way. Can I have a staff report, please? And I believe a report from the group that's working on this from the college.
Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission, thank you for having us here this evening. Members of the public, we're glad that you could join us and participate in this session as well. I'm going to apologize. Typically, when we do a meeting like this, I'd like to be front and center, but I have really lousy balance, so if you'll excuse me, I'm going to present from here at the microphone, and just want to make sure that you understand that we want to have a robust discussion about the site plan for the campus as we go through this. I'll go ahead and make my presentation, go through the proposed site plan for the campus. The Planning Commission will then have comments, and then after that, we'll turn it over to all of you who would like to make comments on the proposed site plan. So we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to understand the site plan and then offer your input on it. The purpose of holding this session today is so that we can forward comments back to the College of the Desert, and I'll get to that process in just a moment. Let me start off, however, first by indicating that the site plan for the Palm Springs Mall campus was originally started back before the pandemic, and of course, with the pandemic, things went on hold. The Board of Trustees voted to move forward with the campus schematic design in February of this year, and as part of that process, they established a project management team to assist in providing input on the proposed campus design. That project management team consists of Dr. Scott Adkins, who's the director of West Valley Campuses for the College of the Desert. And Dr. Adkins, if you could just raise your hand, he's right here with us this evening. Also on the project management team is Robert Rausch from the Mass Companies. They will be the ones who are responsible for building the campus. And then 3 representatives from the cities that will be benefiting from the campus. We have Mayor Rita Lamb from Cathedral City. Mayor Lamb has a background in education, so it's very beneficial to have her on this project management team. And then we also have Daniel Porras from the City of Desert Hot Springs, who's their deputy city manager. His background is engineering, so as he's reviewed the plans, he's been very helpful in offering comments from that perspective. And then I was asked to be the representative for the City of Palm Springs. I'm a deputy city manager with the city. My background is in urban planning and architecture, and so that's what I bring to the group. The project management team has held a series of meetings over the last couple of months, and we've reviewed several iterations of the site plan and offered comments on those iterations. Those meetings have been open and available to the public, and we have had some members of the public attend those. But as they've been held in Palm Desert, I can understand that it's been a little bit tough for Palm Springs residents to attend those meetings, hence the reason that we wanted to have you all here tonight in order to provide the opportunity for you all to be able to see the plans and comment on them as well. The project management team has one more meeting that's going to occur later this month. And so what we'll be doing as we take your comments this evening, we have one of our planners, Alex Rubalcava, who's going to be taking down all of the comments. We'll then be forwarding those to the project management team and the College of the Desert so that they can take our comments into consideration as we look at the final iteration of the plan. And so that's the process that the College of the Desert has been using to finalize the plan for the campus. One of the things to understand is that college campuses, just like high schools, elementary schools, are not subject to local regulation, and so they don't have to go through our building department or through our planning department for review and approval. they go straight to the Department of the State Architect for approvals. So even though we don't have jurisdiction over this project, again, I think it's very beneficial for us to be able to have the opportunity to comment on the site plan and offer our thoughts. One of the reasons why I wanted to do that before the Planning Commission is the Planning Commission is a city agency that has responsibility and expertise in reviewing site plans. And so I wanted to make sure that we had the comments of our Planning Commission in addition to comments from our residents and our nearby property owners in terms of the design of the campus. And so that's why we are involving them as well. Despite the fact that they don't need our approval, agencies such as College of the Desert and other universities, colleges, schools are requested to work with local jurisdictions. They've already reached out to our engineering department in terms of looking at traffic impacts, the availability of utilities, and how it will integrate within our existing system. And so they are already doing that. And again, your participation this evening is how they are bringing you into the process for this. As I had mentioned, all of the comments that we're taking this evening will be forwarded to the project management team in College of the Desert for consideration at their next meeting on June 14th. That is also a public meeting. It will be held in Palm Desert. If anyone wants to attend that meeting, you're more than welcome to join. They'll have public comment available there too. So this isn't your last chance. There's also one more chance to offer your input. As we talk about the college campus, I just want to remind everyone that we're focusing on the design of the campus site. We're not getting into other issues such as academic programs. While that plays a part of determining what buildings they need to offer on the campus, our focus this evening is really looking at the site plan, the placement of buildings, landscaping, things like that. And so that's going to be our focus this evening. With that, let me go ahead and get into kind of the foundation for the design of the campus. In determining guiding principles or factors that should be considered as part of the campus design, the Board of Trustees and the College of the Desert team looked at a number of different things. For example, they wanted the project to be focused on students and student activities. They wanted it to be highly flexible in terms of its spaces so that they could be used for a variety of activities. One of the things that speaks to our values in the city of Palm Springs is they wanted it to be environmentally conscious and energy efficient. That fits in with our sustainability goals. They also wanted to be mindful of its architecture and future expansion opportunities. And as we get into the site plan, you'll see that there are opportunities for future phases of the college to expand. I'm going to show you the site plan as we begin to talk about the needs of the campus, what type of buildings they need, what type of facilities they need. And so I'm just going to generally speak about that with you. I'm going to start with Building 1, and I'll try and point to that. That's here at the corner of Farrell and Baristo. Let me just help orient you a little bit. The campus lies between, sorry if I can point this in the right direction. Tockwitz Canyon here on the north, Farrell here on the east, Baristo on the south, and then we have our residential neighborhood to the west. So going to building number 1, this is called the Accelerator Building. It's going to house a number of different programs, and I'll get into that in just a minute. Moving upward, we have building number 2, which is also facing Farrell. This is going to be culinary and hospitality. And then they have a third building on Farrell, and this will be at the intersection of Farrell and Tockwitz. And this is going to be their event space. They have 2 additional buildings that are teamed here towards the west end of the site, and that's going to be their maintenance and operations facility, as well as their central utility plant. And then down here at the bottom, number 7, is the Palm Springs Cultural Center. That will remain in its current position will share parking and facilities with the College of the Desert, and so that remains a part of this overall campus. So with that basic understanding of the campus in mind, let me talk first about the Accelerator building that will be at the southeast corner of the site at Farrell and Baristo. This building is approximately 95,000 square feet in size as it's currently designed, and it's intended to house the following programs. The first is an accelerated learning component, which would include group study rooms, flexible instruction space, and then also student support services and academic support. It will also house the PACE program, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I hadn't heard of the PACE program before. It's their partnership and community education program, and what it does is it partners with the local business community to train employees and provide them with the skills that they need to be successful in their careers. It also serves as a resource for emerging industries and emerging instructional programs, and also provides lifelong learning for area residents. And so it encompasses a broad number of opportunities, including career skills as well as continuing education for community members. In addition to those two programs, there will also be a digital arts and media program that will include a radio station and have screening rooms as well as production facilities. There will be a Center for Excellence in Healthcare, which will include not only the Student Health Center, but also labs, teaching space, control rooms. And then finally, it will also house the architecture program. College of the Desert is coordinating not only with their Palm Desert campus, but also Cal Poly Pomona in terms of offering an architecture program. And so we're very pleased to see that program coming here to the Palm Springs campus. The next building is the Culinary and Hospitality Institute. It will include the culinary program, training in culinary arts, and then the hospitality program, which will include several mock hotel rooms, a welcome desk, and other facilities to instruct students in hospitality and management. The third building along the Farrell frontage is an event center. It's scheduled to be about 23,000 square feet. They had originally indicated that it might include an amphitheater. As I understand it, the amphitheater is no longer going to be a part of this first phase of the campus. Is that correct, Dr. Adkins? Okay. So no longer the amphitheater to be considered here. The event center is going to be an outgrowth of the culinary program in that it can be used for the culinary students as a training facility, but will also offer event space, banquet rooms, et cetera, that will be available not only for college functions, but also available to community functions as well. And then the final component as part of the campus is their central utility plant and maintenance. Those buildings will be about 20,000 square feet in area, and that will be located on the western part of the campus. So with that, let me talk a little bit about the evolution of the campus design between the initial design that was done in 2021 versus the schematic design that we've seen in the project management team meetings over the last couple of months. So the layout of the campus is basically similar, but one of the critical things that was removed by the Board of Trustees was a learning hotel. Originally, they wanted to have a full-scale facility to use as part of their hospitality management program, but in looking at the overall needs of the campus, they have since removed that from the design. Another change from the 2021 plan was to relocate the event center. Originally, it was intended to be more towards the center of the campus, But looking at the site after they had removed the hotel facility, it helps to reinforce that corner at Tockwitz and Farrell, and so they decided to move the event center to that space. And it gives kind of a landmark building at that very important corner as people are coming from the airport. Another change is that the maintenance and operations building, which was originally back by the Palm Springs Cultural Center, was combined with the central utility plant, and they have since been relocated to the central west part of the campus site. So going into the site plan, let me go into those individual components as it exists today. As I had indicated, we have the accelerator building here at the southeast corner of the campus with the hospitality and event center here along Farrell. There is a large vacant area here along Tockwitz. That's what we anticipate would serve for future expansion plans of the campus. We've got the maintenance and operations and central utility plant there, and then the Palm Springs Cultural Center here. Going into additional detail about the site plan itself, the first image that you see here is relative to the circulation plan for vehicles on the campus site. There are 3 primary entrance points on the campus site. We have 2 existing centralized traffic signals. One is here at Sunset Drive and Tockwitz, which already exists. We have a second signalized intersection here at Baristo on the south side, adjacent to the Palm Springs Cultural Center. And then what is being proposed is to have a 3rd entry point to the campus here on Farrell. And so those will be the 3 entry points for vehicles on the campus. The campus planners have also looked at where will people be dropped off and picked up. There's a number of those locations here at the interior of the site, along the primary axis for the 3 buildings, as well as a mobility hub, which I'll talk about in just a moment. So not only considering vehicle access, they also took a look at pedestrian access, and in particular, pedestrian access from public transportation. The idea being to support students who will be arriving by Sunlines. There is an existing bus stop on Farrell. The intent is to move it further to the south, closer to the accelerator building. And then also there will be a bus stop here on Baristo that will be part of the mobility hub. And so looking at how those 2 bus stops relate to the buildings, they've looked at the average walk time from those bus stops to the various campus facilities in terms of planning how pedestrians will access the buildings, how students will access those buildings. Another thing that they looked at was bicycle circulation, because that's going to be another component as well. Taking access from the city's bike lanes, how will people arrive on the campus site? You will see that bikes will be able to enter the campus at those 3 same points as vehicle traffic will, but they will have bicycle parking that is closer adjacent to the main buildings on the campus, as well as adjacent to the mobility hub, and then also providing bicycle parking close to the event center as well. So that's another thing to take into consideration in looking at the site plan. Finally, looking at parking lots and how will the students access the buildings from parking lots. As you can see from the site plan, most of the parking is located at the center or to the west side of the site. And so taking into consideration how long it will take students to get to the buildings from the various points of the parking lot. One of the considerations that we've offered at previous meetings of the project management team is to take into consideration shading from the parking lot and in the parking lot itself so that it's a comfortable journey for pedestrians to the buildings. And so that's something that has been discussed. We'd like to get your feedback and input on that tonight as well. As I had mentioned, energy efficiency and sustainability has been a large component of this campus design and one of the guiding principles. And so they are looking at having a generous photovoltaic or solar panel component to the campus for their energy needs. The campus will be essentially all electric except for the areas where they'll need gas for the kitchen cooking equipment and their science labs. They also intend to have a large component of electric vehicle charging stations. They're looking at water usage, their landscaping, and other components into how they can reduce the water usage for the campus itself. And then ultimately, one of the things that they'd like to do is apply for LEED certification. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's Leadership in Energy Efficiency and Design. It's a national program that certifies buildings based on their construction and energy usage. And so those are the things that they will be looking at as they get into the details of the campus design, is making sure that it's energy efficient and water efficient as well. One of the interesting components that they're thinking about in the design of the campus is what they call learning everywhere. And that's really two things that I see there, is the ability to have learning that occurs outside of the buildings on the campus, as well as identifying the sustainability components as part of that. And so what they're proposing is to have signage and windows that help to inform students and visitors to the campus about the energy usage and the steps that they're taking in order to reduce their energy, as well as providing outdoor opportunities for student learning. And so this is something that's integrated into the campus design as well, and something that I thought was just kind of an unusual component that isn't usually thought about as we look at a campus design. With that, let me go ahead and show you some of the images that we have of the campus and the buildings to date. Keep in mind that these are still in the schematic phase. They haven't been finalized, but it helps to give you an idea of the general massing and the height of the buildings, as well as their location, their setback from the adjacent streets, and their position on the site. Here you have an aerial from Farrell Drive here in the foreground of the image. This is Farrell along here. This is one of the primary entrance points here at the midpoint of the campus on Farrell. The accelerator building is here. The culinary and hospitality building is here. And then their event center building is here. This is a closer image of the main entry to the campus from Farrell. You'll see the accelerator building here to the left with the culinary building here to the right. And then you'll notice that the driveway into the campus is also shaded by a canopy, that there is essentially a canopy that runs along and joins the accelerator building to the culinary and hospitality building, and that covers the central driveway as well. Here is an image from Farrell of the accelerator building. One of the things that we talked about in our project management team buildings is that these campus buildings need to have a face on Farrell Drive. And what you'll see here is that there is a prominent entry feature here from Farrell, as well as windows towards Farrell Drive. One of the other things that I need to point out, and I failed to mention this as we were looking at the site plan, is that they do intend to have their service access on the accelerator building and the culinary and hospitality building from the Farrell Drive frontage. And as I get back to the site plan, I'll try and remember to point that out to you. So they will have service accessing from Farrell Drive. They are screening that area and are encouraged to make that an integrated component of the building so it's a friendly frontage instead of looking directly into a service yard. And so screening will be a very important component of that. Here's another view of the accelerator building. This is looking from Barristo, where we will have the mobility hub. The mobility hub will have spaces for buses to have bus stops, as well as a location for rideshare vehicles, Lyft, Uber, to drop off students or other visitors to the campus. And so this is a view from Barristo looking back towards the accelerator building. You'll also notice on this side of the building, there's a generous canopy overhang, and in particular, this overhang on the west side of the building, which includes a canopy over the primary outside circulation for the campus buildings, so that students are protected from the sun along that frontage. Here's a close-up of the entry, the west entry to the accelerator building. You'll notice the amount of glazing that is contained there along that frontage of the building. This is the primary entry with a grand staircase going up to the second level of the building. And again, the shaded walkway that occurs along the west face of the buildings on the campus there. Here is an image of the Culinary Institute as well as the Event Center. This is looking from inside the campus. This is the Event Center building here, and then this is the Culinary and Hospitality Management building here. The continuation of that covered walkway and extensive canopy over the buildings provided shaded outdoor spaces as well. The design team has provided a number of preliminary sections through the building. What this helps to do is to tell us about the proposed height of the buildings in terms of how they function. This is a section looking through the accelerator building. The primary height of the accelerator building is going to be 35 feet here. You'll notice that there is a one-story component facing Farrell. That's going to be 24 feet. And then they do have mechanical screening up here on top of the roof, and that comes to a maximum of 51 feet. And so the majority of the buildings in general on the campus, those that are 2 stories, will be a maximum of 35 feet in height. There will be some portions that extend up to 51 feet for screening, but they're generally set back from the edge of the canopy. This is another section through the accelerator building showing the 2-story entrance space into the building. Again, the major area is 35 feet in height. The mechanical equipment up on the roof of the building with its screening will be about 51 feet in height. And then finally, through the north end of the campus, looking at the culinary building. This is actually mislabeled. It says accelerator, but it's the Culinary and Hospitality building. It too has generally a maximum 35-foot height limit here. With the continuation of the canopy, there is a portion of their second level that will be slightly higher than that. But it does still fit within the screening area and is set back from the edge of the canopy building itself. Another thing that I wanted to share with you is the project schedule for the campus so that you have an understanding of how they'll proceed through the schematic design, design development, and then construction of the West Valley campus. And I apologize, this is probably extremely hard for any of you to read right here, so I'll walk through that with you here just little by little. So looking at where we are currently in 2023, with June of 2023, we're looking at coming to the end of the schematic design phase. As I had mentioned, there's still the opportunity to provide comments on the schematic design up through the next project management team meeting, which will be on June the 14th. Once they are finalized with the schematic design, presented to the Board of Trustees, they'll move forward into what is called the design development phase. Any Modifications that have been made during the schematic design phase will then be developed during design development, and then they'll move on to construction documents, which is basically their building permit set. And so they'll be working on that through about mid-2024. They'll then submit to the state architect for their permits and approvals. They anticipate obtaining approval from the Office of the State Architect towards the end point of 2024, and then with that, they'll begin into the construction phase in late 2024. That will start with the grading of the site, the initial infrastructure on the site, and then eventually they'll move down to the actual construction of the buildings themselves. The idea being that in early 2025, they would start construction of the buildings and then complete construction by 2026. I just want to note that this is their tentative schedule to date. Sometimes along the way, there are issues that may prevent that, but that's giving you a general timeline of what we anticipate for the schedule at this point in time. So with that, that concludes my presentation. One of the things I did want to do, I want to leave the site plan up on the screen so as that you're offering comments. We'll have that up and available for you all to look at. And then finally, I wanted to point out one thing that I failed to show you earlier in the presentation, and that was the delivery yards that they have here for the Culinary and Hospitality Institute. Basically, it's a screened area here on the Farrell frontage, shown in gray, and that does have a driveway from Farrell here. And then there's also a second area here for the Accelerator building that will also be screened. The area shown in gray is basically that support area with a driveway off of Farrell as well. So I just wanted to point those out since I missed that in one of the earlier slides on the presentation. So that concludes my presentation to you with a layout of the site plan. With that, Madam Chair, I'd like to turn it over to you for comments from the Planning Commission and then comments from the public. In addition, as I had mentioned, Alex is here taking notes for us, and so she'll be writing down all of your comments so that we can send those to the project management team and
the city
College of the
engineer
Desert.
is here if anybody has questions as well regarding traffic flow and other issues. What I'd like to do, Commissioner or Vice Chair Roberts has a schedule and will need to leave early, so I'd like to start with him in terms of comments and go down through the members of the commission.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Fagg, thank you for a great presentation. Could you remount the elevation of Building 2? I just wanted to see that screened drop area again. From the Farrell side.
Whoops, I'm pushing the wrong button here. Okay, so this right here would be the screened service yard on the Farrell frontage.
Are you able to expand that?
Unfortunately, I'm not.
Okay, it's hard to read. So we're calling that a drop area. So that's where all deliveries for culinary will be. Okay, so we anticipate a lot of truck use in that area. Okay. Yeah. And then on Building 1, we have a similar situation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Another quick question, phasing. I couldn't read the schedule. God knows what it looked like to the audience, but I couldn't read it right in front of me. Can you just give us a brief timeline on what on phase 1, which is all we're really looking at for the next few years, correct?
Correct.
Can you clearly define phase 1?
Yeah, so going to the site plan, all of the buildings that you see here on the plan are phase 1 and are intended to be constructed at the same time.
Okay.
Going back to the schedule, As I had mentioned, they'll go through design development, construction documents, and submit to the state architect in 2024, mid-2024, with the idea that they would have approval from the state architect at the end of 2024, and then begin their site work in 2024, and then construction of the buildings themselves would start in early 2025, and then continue through the end of 2026.
So they're anticipating an approximate one-year schedule when construction starts?
Actually,
correct?
longer than that. It's going to be about a year and a half for the
Okay.
construction schedule, starting in about March of 25 and ending in December of 26.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard you. I thought you said they intended to start the end of '24. Okay, thank you. So, in looking at this and trying to remember, I remember the first iteration pretty well because it got a lot of press. The second iteration that happened, I don't remember that well, but it looks to me, I know the project went back to the original architects. It looks to me like we rolled back to a lot of what was originally proposed the first time. Would that be correct? Other than the hotel, it looks pretty similar.
Yes, it does look very similar. The hotel was omitted, and with that, they moved the event center up to where the hotel had been. So as you're looking at the footprint of the campus, it's very similar. It's obviously smaller with the omission of the hotel, but it is very similar as you look at the east side of the campus along Farrell in
Okay,
terms of its layout.
Thank you so much. I remember when Vibe came before us. I think Kathy and I we've been serving on the Planning Commission for what seems like a lifetime now. And when Vibe came through, I remember Vibe anticipated the College of the Desert because we were already talking about it then. And in fact, I recall that we gave them gated parking because of this, and they anticipated having this across the street. And when you look at the design, you can see that they did. For Vibe, that is. So I have positive comments. First of all, I want to say that it's a very, very attractive design. It doesn't feel institutional in any way. It feels very welcoming to me. The use of materials and the colors and the landscaping look like they'll work really well for the site and for the intended uses. The flow and accessibility looks good to me. One of my earlier concerns was somebody getting off a bus at Building 1 and then having to get to Building 3, but it looks like because of all the shading, they will be shaded for most of that period. Would that be correct?
Generally, that's correct, yes.
Okay. I won't speak to numbers of parking and things like that because we'll leave that to engineers. I was also very impressed with this sustainability plan. It looks like it was well thought out, and along with the overall scale and balance, it feels like it's just going to be a nice place and a good place to go and learn and a welcoming place for the community. You know, I won't speak to any uses because that's not our job, but overall, in terms of a group of buildings with a specific purpose, it looks good. And I would enthusiastically support it to council. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to have to come on the other end of that spectrum. So I was thinking about what about an academic experience gives to a student other than the specific learning that they've enrolled in. And one of those things to me is the chance encounter, the serendipitous event that takes place when two people or a group of people meet that don't really expect to talk to each other. That kind of interaction where you're exchanging ideas. And I would hope that this campus would promote that. But I want to just talk about what an architectural partie is. It's the organizing principle for basically a site plan. And as you know, you start looking at this blank slate. There's streets on the perimeter, but it's a big flat site. And you could think about different parties. There could be a big circle like the Apple campus. It could be a series of multiple courtyards. It could be individual freestanding pods kind of scattered in a landscape. It could even be vertical where you stack each academic unit on top of each other. It could be a grid of streets. What I look at here, I see a linear partie. That is, the buildings are lined up in a long line across the perimeter of the site. And to me, that you're not fostering the kind of interactions I described, those serendipitous chance encounters where you're able to communicate with people that you wouldn't normally come across in your academic setting. And so losing that serendipitous interaction because of the linear placement of the buildings, think of it as a street with buildings only on one side of the street. And you're not concentrating that energy in any place. You're also losing the visual stimuli that it could accompany that sort of organization, where you might have the teaching kitchen prominently displayed for people to walk by, and you're not in that program, but you see the activity and the energy. You might become interested in it. Or you might become interested in somebody that's doing that, to have that conversation about what they're doing. And then also the radio program or the digital communication program could foster that sort of thing too, if it was highly visible. There's no central focus to this design. It's a linear design with individual units spread across the length of that perimeter. I also think the design fosters a commuter school mentality, where somebody's going to drive to the school, take the bus to the school, walk to the school, bike to the school, do their business. They're going to get in the door that's closest to their academic unit and scoot out and back out into the parking lot, the bus stop, or whatever. So I think the design as presented does foster a commuter school mentality. Then, to make matters worse, they decide to run a 4-lane roadway through the middle of it, further alienating the various academic components from each other. I don't expect anybody to sit up and say, okay, we're going to redesign this, but they could at least get rid of that 4-lane highway or roadway dividing it. Why wouldn't that be used for a pedestrian usage? You have adequate vehicular access with signaled entry points both on Tockwitz and Baristo. Why do you need a third entry point on Farrell? It's just redundant, and it's giving too much space to cars. The campus should be more pedestrian-oriented than that. And I think the design really fosters isolation between the various academic units. I wanted to talk about nibbling around the edges a little bit, because what I just said was not. And these are just specific comments. I looked at the academic disposition. Again, I don't know how the academic units are going to function necessarily, but I did focus in on the 3, I think, architectural design spaces, and they looked like kind of run-of-the-mill square rooms. They didn't have any, to me anyway, maybe I'm wrong about this, architectural interest. With those 3 rooms, I don't think you're going to be attracting the level of student that you would want to be graduating from an architectural program in Palm Springs. That's one point. Another point I want to make is I don't think we're going to see an expansion on this campus for a great length of time, and I'm hoping there's some very nice depth to the landscape buffer along Tockwitz. You know, it's our main street. We need the palm trees. The vibe is growing in nicely with some of those trees. I hope there's attention paid from a landscape perspective along Tockwitz. This is just a comment. It's a ridiculous amount of parking. That's never going to be filled up with those buildings. Maybe with a little bit more buildings up along Tockwitz, there's a chance, but boy, it just looks like, I don't know, it just looks like way too much parking. And then to say phase one is along Tockwitz, well, that just completely ignores whatever you've built, or phase two rather, that just completely ignores what you've built in phase one. If you're going to say we've accommodated for phase two, it would need to have some relationship to the buildings in phase one, and it can't where it's positioned. And then finally, because I'm just an old curmudgeon, the overhangs for shading purposes are too high. They're way up in the air, and they're going to allow a lot of sunlight to pour into and under those overhangs. So I would recommend maybe a secondary canopy under the, I mean, they're very attractive. You look at them, they're great big, they're up there in the air, and they're a nice shape, but they're not doing their job efficiently as a shading device, and maybe there's a secondary lower shading device under them. So that's what I got.
Commissioner Land?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this will work well. Let's see. I share some of the comments or some of the observations of my fellow commissioners regarding the architecture. I'm just about as impressed with it overall as the vice chair was. I also have really strong concerns about the fundamental layout of the project. It feels to me to be more a very linear experience, almost a strip mall experience as opposed to a campus where we get together and talk and meet and have the opportunity to walk from one place to the next. That being said, I think we're probably way past the point where there are going to be changes made in that. So I have a couple of suggestions or observations that I think might help to make it a little bit more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. I am concerned that it is definitely poised to be a drive-to destination, a drive-to campus, and that's a shame because it's lost opportunity. But if we do some things to make it more attractive to both cyclists and people arriving on the bus, as well as to walkers, I think that could be helped. I note that in none of the renderings, I'll start with bicycles first. The renderings don't anywhere show actually bike parking or bike racks or people riding bicycles. It's as though that's kind of missed altogether. And I think that because it is central in the city, you will get a lot of people if you just make it convenient for them to arrive on a bike. The bikes are now routed through the parking lot, largely through the parking lot with the cars, which is a scary experience for a cyclist because the cars back out into where you're expected to ride your bike. If the sidewalks for pedestrians that wind through the site were instead changed or widened to accommodate both bicyclists and pedestrians, I think people would be more comfortable with that. You also want to be able to ride your bicycle right to the front entrance of wherever you're going and parking it near the building, not near the parking lot where people with trucks will come and take it away while you are in class. So I would encourage moving the accommodations for cyclists closer to the buildings, best if they are separated from the pedestrians because it's a little bit crowded. I notice in some of the renderings they show the sidewalks are wide enough for 2 pedestrians and that's it. You couldn't bike around or through them. So either adding new bike accommodations closer to the buildings or widening the ones for the pedestrians, I think would probably be a good approach to make it more bicycle friendly. Also, the buses at what I think we call the Mobility Center on Baristo, those buses all arrive with, if it's set up for it, with bicycles on the front of them. You need to be able to take your bike off the bike rack on front of the bus and immediately ride it to where you're going without having to dodge your way either through pedestrians or through vehicles. And it seems like we're missing those accommodations. So I think that's an area that could be enhanced to be more accommodating. On the mobility plan a little bit further, there is currently a bus line that goes down. Baristo isn't the only side where buses come from. Buses go down Tahquitz Canyon. There's bus stops there. There are people that will be entering the site, if they can, from that side. And the mobility plans and the pathways don't show anything coming from the north side where there are currently. There's a bus stop right just west of Farrell on Tahquitz, and I think the same calculation should be made to analyze how long a walk it is for people who come from buses and actually come to the other side of the site, not just the one to the south. Okay, I'm going to address the landscaping or the sustainability plan a little bit. I would suggest that many of the projects with today's water restrictions and the design review and the requirements of the Desert Water Agency or CVWD, whatever body you're going through, setting a goal of 50% designated drought-tolerant native landscaping is way too low. Typically, you're going to see 75 or 80 or 90%. In some cases, there are some beautiful developments that have been done at 100% native landscaping species. So I would encourage the college to up their goal a little bit in that area, because I think you can do beautiful work with completely drought-tolerant landscaping, and that will make it easier when you're looking for your LEED certification as well. One of the other things, too, that I think might be a good opportunity is taking a look at the culinary program and the credential program that is offered at Cal Poly Pomona for architecture. You have the opportunity to have a culinary garden. The Pomona School has I always call it the Center for Sustainable Living. I think that's what it was originally called, but it's been retitled. I wrote it down so I would remember. The Lyle Center for Regenerative Studies, where they have productive landscaping. Worked into their landscaping is actually plants you can eat that are grown to be productive and to sustain food or sustain people through food and sustenance, not just to be pretty. And they do really remarkable things. If you've never been there, go. They'll hold conferences or meetings there, or just schedule a time to go take a look at it. But I think that involving a garden that is used by the culinary students and could be every bit as interesting and educational, and give you the opportunities you're looking for having education everywhere, by letting the public see not just into the kitchen where people are cooking, but into the landscape material that is used that actually produces sustenance for people in the way of food. So I'd say food for thought, but that sounds like a really bad pun, so I will move on. And the only other thing that I want to address, and excuse me, Deputy City Manager, can you tell me how big the vacant space is at the north side? How many acres do they have there?
I don't know the exact acreage there, but just looking at the size of the space, I would imagine that they have probably about 2.5 acres, I'm guessing, just off the top of my head.
Okay. I just finally learned how to outsmart my microphone. Okay. Originally, this has been an area with a lot of input from the public about what do we do with the space that's left open. And I've heard lots of suggestions, and I originally was envisioning all kinds of landscaping things that could be done beautifully. However, as I look at COD's current campus, and I recognize how expensive it is to maintain landscaping, and how easily that budget is cut to focus on education, I think it's fair to presume that a lot of landscaping will not be maintained at a standard that would be attractive for people entering the city on our main thoroughfare. And I have seen examples, there are actually a couple that are here in the desert, but where more of a sculpture park is done, something you can use public art, and it can actually be relatively inexpensive, and it can be a changing program. And it is an opportunity for the art students at the main campus to engage in some sort of artworks that are displayed there. They're great opportunities for taking selfies and posting them on every form of social media that is out there, and for getting people walking along the Tockwitz frontage if there is something that they can engage in. And then you don't have to worry about the cost of watering, the cost of pruning, the fact that things are overgrown. I know that at the main campus at College of the Desert in Palm Desert, because it's state land, you can't have code compliance, addressing the fact that the landscaping is substandard and really needs to be brought up. And frankly, the college has a hard time continuing to pay for the maintenance of landscaping. So if we look for a lower plant count in the landscaping along there and look at some creative opportunities, I think we might get something that better suits the concept of this being vacant for a long time to come. And the fact that we do have people driving down Tockwitz as their main entrance from the airport and wanting to have a pleasant experience and interaction with the college there. And at that point, I better stop talking.
Commissioner Miller?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The advantage of following these esteemed colleagues is that they've covered almost everything, but I also have the opportunity to rebut some of the things they said. Just kidding. I would say overall, I think the design character seems attractive and appropriate for the community context. I would like to address the main comments that Commissioner Layen and Commissioner Hirschbein made regarding the linear sort of fabric along Farrell. And I think with the relatively limited programs that are being offered here, I don't know that we can expect a lot more in terms of a sort of a true campus vibe where buildings are clustered and more internalized. I think it's important that there be that urban fabric of building along Farrell and in the future, hopefully not too far in the future, along Tockwitz. So I think in general, they've done a relatively good job of treating the streetscape of Farrell. Importantly, I think the design is great. I would like to take issue with the access sort of on Farrell, the utility access, service access along Farrell. I think what you've essentially done is put your back end, so to speak, and that's putting it nicely along Farrell, and I think that's wrong. I'd be surprised if you can do that in a way that really gives the appropriate nod to Farrell that it deserves as a major north-south corridor in the city. But I wait to see more detail, I guess, along the architecture and treatment along Farrell. I think, if nothing more, an internal connection between those service areas and the internal vehicular system is probably appropriate and will help alleviate some of the concern with the appearance and usage along Farrell. I think that the comments regarding the 4-lane roadway through the site, I think they can be addressed probably with appropriate crossings and design elements to really sort of allow that to occur. picking up some of the comments regarding the sort of the lost opportunity for student interactions with each other. I think you could embellish a pedestrian sort of node, perhaps between buildings 1 and 2, similar to the way you've done the vehicular roundabout in the center of the site. There could be some more concentration of a pedestrian node that links buildings 1 and 2, even though it might be pierced by a vehicular way. I think the west side of the site, because there are 8 single-family homes in Sunrise Park neighborhood, I think the treatment of the screening is essential there. I think you need to be sensitive to those single-family homes facing the west side of your site in terms of tree and shrub screening and noise abatement, wall, and work with those residents to find an appropriate solution for that. I don't necessarily have a problem with the location of the buildings 4 and 5. I think they're far enough away that if there's an appropriate physical barrier, I think that those buildings there, 4 and 5, shouldn't be an impact to the residential to the west. I am concerned with what's happening to the vacant area on Tockwitz until such time that that would be developed. I think it's some options could be to provide some temporary and/or recurring pop-up type of uses along there, similar to a mini version of the fair that you have there at College of the Desert's main campus in Palm Desert. Let's see. I agree with Commissioner Lane about the landscape plan showing only 50% native or, quote, adaptive plant material. I think that number. I think that number could be as high as 75 or 80% as well. I think it would be easy to do and appropriate given our water restraints. Let's see. I think I've touched on all of my main comments. Again, I think the importance of the building streetscape along Farrell and the corner of Tockwitz and Farrell is important, and I think you've done a relatively good job of that.
Thank you. Following up on people's comments, I like the architecture in the building. I thought it was interesting that the buildings were placed on Farrell instead of Tockwitz. And I'm assuming that's because there's a desire to have a view of the mountains from the campus. I have a concern with the 4-lane roadway and the turn in there, and I was wondering if our city engineer has looked at that. Farrell's fairly heavily. Do you have concerns about that? That's a question.
I'm going to be careful how I answer this. The schematics of the driveway on Farrell, we haven't seen a lot of it. We haven't been really involved in a lot of it other than off-site improvements that we've had discussions with the COD staff about. But the 4-lane entryway specifically, there's ways that could be mitigated to, maybe perhaps make them, right in, right out with, some kind of a turning, what we call a pork chop in there. There is no median island slated for Farrell Drive to try to mitigate that, so that's not part of the city's circulation plan. So it's not something that's really been brought up as far as how to mitigate that. Because this was in such flux, we weren't sure what the end result was going to be. But it is something that we can talk to the city engineer about and their design team to see if there's some way to mitigate that so that you're, softening it. Maybe you're making it not so intrusive onto Farrell. I think there's an easy solution to get there. It's just up until just recently, it really hasn't been something we've talked about in great detail.
So going into my comments, I do have a concern about that, and I would really like to see the design team work with our city engineers on that entry to make sure that if we have it, it's safe. I wouldn't be worried about entries on Tockwitz and on Baristo, but I am worried there. On the west side of the property, I agree with Commissioner Miller that we need a good buffer for the homes that are on the west side. I like the architecture. I share with Commissioner Hirschbein concerns about the overhead, and I'll talk a little personally. I have a house that's west-facing and looks at the mountains, and my overhang is probably up 10, maybe 12 feet, and it goes out 20 feet, and the sun still really hits the windows in the late afternoon. And I think that overhead needs to be either 2 stories, or it needs to be engineered in such a way that you're looking at it and you make sure that the sun isn't hitting all that glazing until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so that you're protecting the workspaces inside. I think that's really critical. It's a beautiful feature. I loved it when I saw it, but I have personal experience with having designed something that doesn't work on my house as long as I need it to work. And that seems to me the space, and that space is really important. That is the space on the overhang where there'll be mingling. I actually think the accelerator building does that beautifully too, because the spaces move around. But I think if there's outside learning, it's underneath the overhang, and making sure that that space is pleasant, that students can be out there working, discussing, planning, having their meetings most of the year. And so that's probably my biggest concern. I completely agree with my fellow commissioners about the 50% drought-tolerant landscaping. The city has been requiring, I think, all drought-tolerant in new buildings for years. It works. It's beautiful. It can be done, and it'll actually be cheaper for you in the long run. I agreed with some of the comments from PSAA about on the walkways, if there are walkways, and I agree with Commissioner Layan about sidewalks, bicycles, and we are very concerned, at least I'm very concerned about urban heat and ways to alleviate urban heat, and trees are our cheapest way and our best way to alleviate urban heat. So if you spend money on landscape, put in trees, it will save the understory. You won't be replacing plants as quickly, and it will make the environment pleasant. So as I look at the site plan, and a bit of this is thank you so much for letting us comment, for including us in this. We really appreciate it. We really want this campus. We want it to succeed. I'm hoping that the way you designed the parking was kind of an afterthought, and you threw it in because the landscape was designed. But I think it's probably more parking than you need, and you could have more walkways there. You may have more space, but give that plan some thought and some more thought. I think it needs it. On the space along Tockwitz, I don't have great comment. I think my fellow commissioners talked about ways of dealing with that. But one of the thoughts I have, and one of the hopes I have, is in phase 2, many of the community colleges and colleges around the state have worked with developers to create student housing. And that would be so appropriate on Tockwitz. And they've done it in joint ventures. They've done it in ways that haven't cost the colleges as much money. But please, please give consideration to that. Our students need housing. They won't have to commute as far. They need a place to live, and they need something that's affordable. And I think if this college stayed the way it was, but added housing that was available to students, it would even give it a much better chance of being a great success. I think those are all of my comments. I agree with most, I really agree with most of what's said, and thank you. I think at this point, I'd like to open this up to the public for public comment. You will have 3 minutes, and there's a sign-in sheet, so if you would come forward.
I'm on, okay. I totally excited about this project, and I really, as a 17-year resident of Palm Springs, I really want to see it move forward. My name is Bill Sanderson, and I'm excited about the culinary part because I own a restaurant, and we desperately need trained staff into the future, and as well as to keep our youth people here to give them jobs so they don't move away, because I've had several of our staff move away for opportunities. This is going to be great for the city. My only comment about the design is the competition between students and tourists heading towards the airport and the college at the same time. That traffic flow is a knot that's going to happen. I live near the hospital. It's 7 in the morning when all the staff have to get to the hospital by my house. You can't cross the street because and I just see a little bit of a bottleneck with tourists. They only know 2 ways to go to the airport when they get here. So, and if the airport traffic and the classroom schedules combined, you can have a lot of people trying to get into the same area at the same time. And I hope we can look at signage in ways to alleviate the tourists versus the students, because we can't control the airport schedule or the city, the college schedule. But that would be my concern. Thank you.
We only have one person. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is David Powell. I'm a resident of Palm Springs, also near this project. It appears I move near major projects that the city has going on. It appears. Thank you for allowing public comment after the presentation. Allowing us to see and hear about the project design and then commenting is beneficial. I encourage the project team to do the same in their final meeting next week. I believe the buildings are attractive. It's a very nice design, very, very good design overall. Some of the concerns I have, as do some of the neighbors in the area and with Vibe, where I am, the setback of the culinary building. Maybe the massing of the culinary building from the street seems a little high, predominantly due to the mechanical covering 13 feet in height at the top. Maybe, and also, and maybe the broadening of, let's talk about that again. Multiple comments on a small phone. Maybe some additional setback of the accelerator building to match, and for also the culinary building, it seems a little close to the street. As you're looking there, when you have a 55-foot building where you have the second 2 stories and then you have the additional 13 feet. I would hope it's not too late, as comment has been made, to make design enhancements to the project as other design changes have been made between meetings. Of course, the last meeting is next week, so I hope that the team will consider these comments. The Farrell entry point has challenges, as Farrell has 2 lanes of traffic each way with little room before the sidewalks. The design pics make it look like a broad roadway, but it's not. It's a narrow and heavily traveled street with little room for a central turn lane or pork chop, as the engineer was saying. Would think that a traffic design study would have been completed prior to the design going forward, and hopefully something can be done. On campus, on the driveway into the campus from Farrell, there's a potential of pedestrians impeding the traffic from Farrell coming into the campus. Maybe better utilize the other 2 primary access points. Plus, there are 2 added delivery driveways now that I noticed that were pointed out tonight for the deliveries that will also impede the Farrell traffic both ways. I think that the concerns that many of the neighbors have is the height of the building, possibly the massing as you are on Farrell. Yes, we all know that sight lines of the mountain are not guaranteed from anywhere. I've heard that. Unfortunately, also, we couldn't buy this property, as we know, as we were told about another project. So I think that there's opportunity there to possibly push it back, allow a bigger setback, maybe lower some of that, and as the deputy city manager mentioned in the project meeting, softening that wall there that is in that building, the northern building, because it does maybe have a little height and massing and maybe soften it a little bit from Farrell. Those are my current comments. Thank you.
That will be helpful. Please.
Madam Chair, I'm going to move the sign-in sheet over here. So as people are queuing up, maybe you can sign up in advance so that thank you.
Thank you.
That'll make it quicker. Hi, my name is Kathy Roberts. I live on the Farrell side in the Vibe development. When we originally bought, of course, my husband had to go find out what was going to be over there. And we were told it was all going to be one-story buildings. Because, you know, you pay a lot for a mountain view. We're not going to have the ocean view, we're going to have that mountain view at least. And I heard you say, which was nice, you know, oh, they're worried about having a mountain view for the college. Well, they should be in class and they should be studying and not looking at the mountain view. Where we live there and we want to see our mountain view. I don't want to see a 51-foot building with, you know, trying to protect shade, which is not going to help, trust me. 51 feet is going to be so high that it's still going to beat in those windows on the first story. Hugely concerned with the people on the other side. I mean, something needs to be done to make sure we protect those homes over there. I don't live there, but they should not have, you know, parking. I mean, it looks like an obnoxious amount of parking all along their homes. There should definitely be some sort of barrier, not just some plants. It should maybe be a wall, something that those people approve. And I'm so 110% against Farrell. I walk outside our development every day. I don't know if you guys know about the UPS trucks that go down that street. They are just flying down that street. Somewhere down there, they get their trucks filled and they're flying down Farrell. If you've got a bunch of kids trying to pull into Farrell to go into that college and pulling out, you are going to get them hit by those UPS trucks. They are barreling. I see them every day. I walk outside my development every day. They just barrel up and down that street because they get those trucks loaded and they're ready to go for the day. So please consider the safety on Farrell. It's a really, really dangerous idea for everybody's safety. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Debbie Patterson. I live on Tockwitz, directly across from where the site is. And one of my concerns is the Farrell access because the traffic at Tockwitz and Farrell is so bad right now, and the lights are wacky. But you've got deliveries and everything coming in at 3 different access points. Then you've got the buses on both sides. But then on the Farrell side where it's open or going to be left undeveloped, what in any kind of consideration is going to be taken to occupy that space during the time that it's sitting vacant? And is it just going to be abandoned, or, you know, we're going to have some sort of decoration in there or something? But you could even put like a park in there or something. Also, the comment that you made about the garden could be directly behind Building 2, where that huge parking space is, and it is a big added incentive to a culinary institute would be a garden. I mean, we've got a lot of, I can't even think of the word, I'm getting old. The food that they're able to prepare is actually right there. So, you know, it would cut down on costs. It would give them the ability to work with native foodstuffs, and the people that are working in the fields out here can also help provide some of this so that it would be a cost saver too.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Rod Wood. I live on 164 Vibe Way. I've seen some of the earlier plans. I see the current one. I see one of the earlier plans had the buildings further back from Farrell to start with. I see it's been moved closer into Farrell. I would think that you actually probably want to swap where buildings 1, 2, and 3 are, kind of with where that east side parking lot is. So you have parking on both sides. There'd be less intensity of traffic. I don't know that having 4 lanes of going in and having to go traffic circle. Americans are not really good with traffic circles, in case you didn't know. Maybe, but certainly not out in California. Anyway, you'd have more or less concentration of traffic, especially off of the Farrell side. I think the Farrell side should also have a light there to help people who are crossing the street, going to, for instance, the bus stops on the other side of the street. It would also help with the extra places that you have for trucks making deliveries. I was writing notes as we were going. I have to agree with the chair about the overhang. It looks lovely, but it doesn't do a lot of good being up so high. I don't know how to mitigate that other than lowering it, which may not look as good. Let's see, putting some of that parking on the Farrell side between where the buildings are and Farrell Street, you could have the handicap parking there, or even have the bicycle areas on that side, which would be a little more protected and wouldn't be right on the street. And I love the idea that somebody mentioned about having housing for students, but I also don't see any food facilities for students. Yeah, they may be coming into campus to go to class, but some of them may have multiple classes. And if that's the case, they'll want to have something to eat. There used to be a Jack in the Box right where that 3 is. Not there anymore. So maybe that should be a consideration in there too. I believe that's about it. So thank you for your time.
Good evening, I'm Jerry Braun. I live in Sunrise Park on the west side of the campus on Paseo Rosetta. And so I just took some notes, so I'm just going to make a few comments. And thank you for the chance to comment. I also have concerns about the vacant area, the future development area on Tockwitz, because that is a major thoroughfare and the welcoming part into Palm Springs as people come and go to the airport. And just to have a blank, empty area there for a number of years, I think is very concerning. I love the idea of housing. I think that would be a great addition to the plan. I also, even though I'm on the opposite side, I agree that a 51-foot height building is going to block a lot of views from the people in the Vibe, and I think that's like a 5-story building. And I know the city is fighting right now with one of the hotel developments where they want to do a 5-story condo development, and that's of concern, and I know the city, this is beyond the city's control, but I think that should be reconsidered. I don't know for sure what is in building 4 and 5, and I'm just wondering if there is a noise concern for the people that live near that part of the neighborhood, and maybe that could be repositioned somewhere else. It seems like that is very close to a lot of homes in that area, and that should be looked at. I agree also with the concerns about all the traffic on Farrell. There, with the main entrance and then also where the delivery trucks would come in, I think that could be, maybe the deliveries could be done somewhere else. It seems like there's a lot of traffic. It's a major thoroughfare, and that seems ill-planned. And just the accelerator building, the list of programs and what's in that building, it seems like a lot of stuff crammed into not a really huge building. I just wonder if there's going to be enough space for what's going on in those programs. And then finally, concerning the traffic from Farrell with the 4 lanes coming in, maybe something to consider if it's a second-story building, maybe to give access for connection for walkways. That could be done on the second level, like a skyway, that could connect those 2 buildings to give more access across all those buildings. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Doug Huth, and I'm a Palm Springs resident, not adjacent to this project, but in the neighborhood. Looks like a nice project. The architecture looks great. Some of my comments are similar to some that have already been made. One, I think the biggest one is the Farrell entries. I don't know if people have seen when they had a problem with the signal there, and it would back up when they had the signal timing wrong. It would back up all the way down past Baristo, and people were making U-turns because they couldn't get, the 2 cars would get through the light, and that's a pretty high traffic and high speed street. I don't know if the main entrance on Farrell that they have shown, if they add a signal there, I don't know if that would cause a problem or solve a problem with that. And then you've got the other 2 entrances, like I think Mike had said that looks kind of, or somebody said looked kind of back of house, but you could probably reverse those, have those entrances on the other side of the buildings from the parking that you already have, rather than from Farrell. But also the thought of having a kind of a common area, I'd like that comment. And I think maybe if they moved building 1, I think it is, the accelerator, maybe up to the east of building 3, or the west of building 3, you might be able to create like a little common area where people could go to, the students could go to the different ones, and then you might be able to alleviate some of the traffic issue. Also, if the way it's set up, if people park it seems like the entrances, they said, the buildings are going to be on Farrell. Everybody's going to have to park and walk around the buildings. That's a long walk, especially for mobility impaired people. If I'm understanding, that's what they were going to do. I think you'd want the entrances to the building from the parking lot side, even though you might need to change the look of it. It would look nice from Farrell, the way it's designed. But if everyone's going to have to walk all the way around there from bus drop-offs or parking drop-offs or the parking lot, it seems like that maybe could be reconfigured a little. I'm glad to see they had a version where building 3 is. They had put at one point I saw that they had put the buildings 4 and 5 up on the corner there, and I'm glad they didn't put that on the corner. You have the back of house things on the main corner of the street. On the heat island effect that they had mentioned, I'm glad to see they're addressing that. I hope they take into account, light-colored roofs, and I guess they can do some light-colored paving now. And as far as the planting trees and stuff, when they did the new park by the museum, they mentioned that they had thought of shading for everybody, so they put in a certain kind of palm tree. Well, palm trees aren't good shading, even the ones they have there. Maybe they're better than other kinds of palm trees, but hopefully they won't put palm trees in for shading. They'll do something with more of a canopy and not over trim them like they do in all the parking lots. As soon as they grow out in Lowe's parking lot or whatever, they trim them back so there's no shading. So hopefully they can plan for, really having some shading for the students that are going to be there.
Sir, your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. And so those are the main things. Good project, though.
Good evening. My name is Eric Graham. As a facilities and maintenance manager and kind of working with architecture people in design, I see one thing that we kind of missed, parking. A couple of the commissioners here have actually stated there's too much parking, and I think you need to rethink that. Cultural Center, number 7. We haven't really talked about that. What I think the design people have done, they've actually done a good thing with the parking, because they've actually looked at the Cultural Center and said, okay, our people are going to be coming and going, our students, in the evenings, because they're going to clash together. All of a sudden, there's not going to be enough parking. Plus, I think basically, that may not be a huge case in 26 when we get everything built and going. But what if they decide later on that there's going to be a huge section of those 2.5 acres there, they're going to add to that, they're going to need that parking. I agree with all the other stuff that's actually been mentioned, but the cultural center is going to be something that we need to look at, not going anywhere, and is there going to be enough parking for that? All those, everything that's going on there. So I think that the parking is extremely adequate. If me being a business, not owner, but kind of next to the business owners, that we have to count our parking spaces all the time. We do it when we want to go and build something new, and of course code comes to us and goes, there's not enough parking. Take a good look at that. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Dennis Smith. I live across the street from the AAA parking lot on Baristo. So I'm not exactly right on Farrell, but I do my daily walks along Farrell. I go northbound, and then a half hour later I go southbound, and I'm a good observer of the traffic there. And this 4-lane highway going into Farrell will not work. And I really dispute the suggestion that there's an easy solution to it. I think you're going to have to use the other exits. I see traffic in the morning going to and from school that blocks past where that entrance would be. Are you going to put a traffic light in there? Are you going to allow people to people going north turn left? That won't work. The only solution you might do is to have a right turn only coming out of that exit and no turn in from the northbound traffic. And you're going to have to put a blockade to keep people from trying that. Otherwise, you're going to congest traffic. If you put in a traffic light, you'll have so much congestion because it's such a short distance between the next two traffic lights that you're going to put a real bottleneck in there, which is not what it needs. The only thing the traffic light would accomplish is to maybe eliminate the nighttime drag strippers who use that as their racing venue. So if you're going to restrict it to right turn only, you certainly don't need 4 lanes. So I hope you can find a better use for that and maybe enlarge the other 2. Thank you.
Do we also have members on Zoom who wish to speak?
We do. We have 2 members with their hands raised on Zoom, so perhaps after this gentleman we can.
Hi, thank you. Richard Gulick. I live in the neighborhood to the west in Sunrise Park, and I wrote an email to the Planning Commission earlier today. My concern is with the placement of buildings 4 and 5. They're right in the center of the residential access, and they're pushed probably the equivalent of 2 lanes from the homes there, mine being one of them. It seems to me that this would be better placed towards Tockwitz, perhaps centered towards Tockwitz, up maybe against where that open space is. With this sort of facility, there's going to be, with operations and central utilities, there's going to be a lot of noise associated with that. And it's not a problem for anyone else other than the people whose homes are there. And so I think there's a more elegant, a more thoughtful solution. And I'm hoping that you folks will reconsider that. Thank you.
Madam Chair, seeing no other speakers in the audience, we have Bruce Hoban online. Bruce, you can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Give me 1 second, please. I just want to point out a procedural Brown Act issue. The agenda stated the public comments were for the presentation. And there were many people who wanted to call in, who were not allowed to call in because someone in the city clerk's office is saying public comments before the presentation for non-agenda items.
Mr. Hoban, thank you for your comment, but we'll start your 3 minutes over. Speak to the project itself.
I will. I just needed to point that out. Here's the fun things. Okay, Flynn, what a fabulous job on presenting the final revised plan. And I love the way you had your little focus circle going on the slides. And it reminds me of the old days when we do presentations in person with a laser pointer. So Flynn, wonderful job, especially since you are picking this up and not directly, continuously involved. I want to say we've reached an historic milestone. We actually got a design that the West Valley was promised and deserved, and it's now reached planning. Never happened before after all these years. And thanks to the December change in the COD's trustees makeup, we're not going to Plan B, which to me was a glorified high school design, but back to the plan we are now seeing. And I really wish to thank COD, thank Flynn and everybody who's been involved on the weekly meetings for making this happen. Little comment about too much parking. I remember back in 2017, I was at the first meeting ever between the former COD president and Mayor Moon. And our one concern in Sunrise Park, which is the west of the campus, was there would not be enough parking and it would overflow. So too much parking to me is not an issue. I love everything we put together. The designs are fabulous, everything. But I saw the one thing about, the parking lot trees. Please, please buy trees that will actually provide shade for cars and keep the pavements cooler. We have all these large retail complexes that put trees in. It's a joke. They don't grow, they don't water them, and we all end up with hot cars and hot pavement. And thank you, Commissioner Wormiuk, for adding housing as an option for open space on the west side in phase 2. I think it's the optimal thing to do. And thank you all very much.
We have Jim Caldwell. You can unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the great presentation. I just want to say I'm a resident on the east side of this development, and I appreciate the comments and the concern about those on the west-facing side. But I think there's concern here for building height and setback along Farrell. I also question why there is land to be developed in the future on Tockwitz when Tockwitz is, in theory, this grand boulevard that introduces Palm Springs to people arriving from the airport, and why this isn't more centered along Tockwitz instead of Farrell, which, as people have noted, is already a busy street with high school and UPS and every other traffic heading north and south. Lastly, I just have to voice a bit of a concern that several of the staff mentioned in their comments that it's probably too late to mention this. And my concern is, why are we talking and providing public comments at this point if it's too late to make any changes to this plan? But thank you.
Time to rein you in.
Okay.
And the last person with their hand raised is Ronnie. Ronnie, you can unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. And thanks, everybody, for presenting the plan. It looks great. I am a Vibe resident. I live on Farrell. A lot of the concerns have been about the issues of Farrell, but I think they're worth repeating. I second all of that in terms of just 5 issues here. Obviously, the height of the building and really how far back it is set back. If you're looking at that diagram on Farrell, I will actually be facing one of those service entries, which is very concerning already with the sound that is on Farrell, the sound of trucks. And really, it is, as somebody put it, the back end of this building is to Farrell. The mechanical screen, the height of that is really a concern. And again, about the height, really what I'm envisioning, or what I hope won't happen, is me looking or having folks look down into my yard and into my windows from a privacy factor. And I'm really hoping that folks will consider really moving and setting back the footprint of that building. Thank you.
I don't see any other speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does the commission want to do any wrap-up or any additional comments? Commissioner Hirschbein.
I mean, we've heard a lot of people have issues with the Farrell driveway for different reasons. And I would just ask the design team to consult the parking engineers, the people that tell you how many cars are going to enter and exit the property on any given amount of time, and see if you can accommodate those on Baristo and Tockwitz, which to me is the obvious solution. And then you would have the opportunity to use that opening between the two buildings as more of a pedestrian plaza focus space. To one person's comment, maybe there's a small food service component there that's part of the teaching. But that would, at least from a pedestrian standpoint, begin to tie the campus together. And I think that deserves looking at. Doesn't seem to be a major redesign. It's just if the two signalized entrances can accommodate the traffic, and I don't know if that study's been done or not, but maybe they need to be 4 lanes each, like you propose for Farrell.
Thank you. Commissioner Vlayen.
Thank you. Two suggestions. There certainly is a lot of concern from the residents at Vibe about their site and their mountain views. And although I acknowledge, like others, that technically there's no legal right to the view, I was not, when I looked at this, I wasn't particularly concerned because Farrell has such a wide right-of-way, and the buildings are set back from Farrell, and there's a wall on the Vibe side. I'm not sure what that line of sight is going to be, but because this has more public meetings to go, I would suggest that the design team do a quick sketch and showing what the line of sight is so that we know whether or not, or so that the residents certainly know or understand whether or not the height of the building is going to be visible from their own properties. And the other thing on the parking, obviously there's a concern about parking. Some feel that there's too much, some that there's too little. I don't know. I just assumed that the design team had done the calculations, and I presume that they have. What I don't know, though, is as part of this parking for phase 2, and if it is, I would suggest in the interest of the heat island effect that any phase 2 parking not be built until a later date when phase 2 is actually built. And that perhaps for future public meetings, there be some information about the number of parking spaces versus the use that is anticipated in phase 1. Thank you.
I think there's nothing else to say, but thank you to the audience and members of the community for coming in and sharing your concerns. Thank you to the college for asking us to comment on it. Thank you to Deputy Director Fagg for excellent presentation. We all want this built, anything we can do to assist, and we hope that our comments have been helpful. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting until our next regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission, which,
Wednesday, June 28th, Madam Chair.
Wednesday, June 28th.